have to be present in our power every moment that we represent ourselves as Black women, because it is not acceptable that people believe, society believes, that they can then take our rights away by menstrualizing our children, our bodies, and our choices. So I just want to kind of talk about reproductive justice, and in the context of Toni Bond Leonard, who is the founder of Black Women for Reproductive Justice and the board chair of SisterSong. She says, you know, it's about reconnecting a woman's health and body with the rest of their lives. So what reproductive justice does as a framework is it places women at the center and all of the issues that intersect with her lives. We're not asking her to live her life on the fringes, and we're not asking her to be a part of movements that don't place her at the center. So that's the focus of our activism. So I'm just going to talk to you about some of the policy issues that we're working on with Trust Black Women currently, and that's in Mississippi. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the Personhood Initiative and the Voter ID Initiative. So for us, those two, I'll talk to you a little bit about, is Personhood Initiative 26, and they're actually having the election on November 8th. So the Personhood Initiative basically says the egg, once it is fertilized, is a person. What does that mean for women's reproductive choices and reproductive decisions? That means that she is going to be criminalized. That means that the provider is going to be criminalized. That means she is going to be shamed, and she is going to be blamed around her reproductive decisions and what she feels is best for her family. So it creates unintended consequences for women, doctors, families, and communities. And it really lacks compassion for rape and incest victims. It really doesn't consider life-saving abortions. It forces young women and girls to have children against their will if they need access to abortion services. And it essentially is going to outlaw birth control. Unacceptable, right? I mean, women need access to these services. So now when we're talking about the Voter ID Initiative and how that intersects, this also touches our immigrant sisters who do not have any type of identification in order for them to be able to vote, in order for them to be able to move forth in the world to access services. So it requires you to have a government ID and a birth certificate. There are so many African Americans that are born in this country, and somehow, you know, if you're born at home or if you're born in kind of an untraditional environment and circumstance, we don't have identification. And for immigrant communities, that's even an even stronger issue that they don't have access to identification. So the anti-choice movement, what we're clear about is that they don't trust Black women. And the pro-choice movement, in terms of this legislation, would be sending the very same message if it voted yes on the voter ID legislation. Talk about, you know, that intersection of class. So if you're going to prioritize your class and, you know, you're going to stay firm in your gender lens, then where does that leave Black women? And so it's interesting when we look at these intersections and when we look at movement building, how are we going to build a very strong and sustainable movement if we're not being intersectional? And that is the very crux of what SisterSong believes. We operate from an intersectional analysis. So now I want to talk about economic access and what that all means. So the Insight Center for Community and Economic Development published a report last year called Lifting as We Climb, Women of Color, Wealth, and America's Future. Now there were, and this report is actually available online, and you can access it yourself and really be able to pull some great content from that. But it was drafted by Mariko Chang and Mizu Louis, excuse me. So overall, women are most likely to have an installment of debt than men, but Black women are even more likely. And when you look at a number of things, even Black women who are educated, like myself, I went to undergrad, I went to grad school, but the percentage of Black women with education have credit card and installment debt that is the highest among all groups, and the burden of debt is particularly heavy for Black women. Why is that? I just throw out these kind of like, rhetorical questions, because these are things that I've thought about that I encourage you to think about. And even when we think about the racial differences in inheritance and wealth, you look at the wealth of Black families in general and overall, and there's no transition, no passing out of wealth, because there's no wealth to be had, right? So excluding vehicles, single Black women have a median of wealth of $100, with Black men at $7,900. There's no sick leave for Black women if we have no wealth. For anything to be, there's no sick leave. If we have an appliance that fails, we can't replace it because we have no wealth. So these are just some of the things that we interrogate when we talk about race, class, gender, and its intersections with SisterSong and Trust Black Women. And I'll just talk to you a bit about how we're fighting back. And if you could grab one of the films out of my bag. So this is our film, We Always Resist, Trust Black Women. And as Denisa was talking about how Black women, in my instance, are organizing, we realize that in terms of our organizing strategies, our narrative isn't out there. We aren't the determinant. We're not determining what our narrative is. This film is one of the first pieces of narrative that I know of that has been produced, written, directed, edited by Black women. So I'm very happy to share this with you. I only have 4 copies with me, but it really looks at the narrative of Black women's resistance throughout history, and how we've been fighting to protect our bodily integrity and our human rights since slavery. This is nothing new for us. It's just not been put out there. You have a lot of narratives of oppressed groups in this country, and they have a narrative and it's from their perspective, but you rarely see the narrative of Black women. And so this film talks about our reproductive integrity, our reproductive dignity, and how we're fighting back. What we do in terms of building movement and driving movement is we go and we build strategies, we build a base, we develop advocacy agendas and platforms. We have a listserv, we have a distribution list, we have sign-on letters. So we do really grassroots targeted organizing around these policies, and we touch the women that we're speaking about. We're not doing research out in the ethers talking about, I know about Black women because I research Black women or I study Black women, as if we're subjects. We are our own subject. We are the people that we're fighting for. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I mean, I think in speaking in this forum, in my meetings, typically we do a call and response type of thing. So I think it's a little, challenging for me for, somebody to be like, that's right, and, that sort of thing. But, again, this is our narrative. We also have a publication called Collective Voices that SisterSong puts out. So we just had a Black abortion edition that provides speaking points for allies. If you don't know how to talk with, stand for, work with, interface with Black women, we have that narrative for you. So I just want to close, and I hope that we have more questions around how we're organizing and what we're doing around Trust Black Women and SisterSong to really bring together the forces of women of color and the strength of women of color, and how we are present, ever present in our power. And I encourage you to be present in your power, to stand with us, we're not asking you to speak for us. We can speak for ourselves. We can provide you with those points of clarity if you need them. And what's interesting is something that a Black feminist, Gloria Wallace, spoke on right at the close of the National Black Feminist Organization, when everyone kind of split up and they were trying to find themselves and find movement. And she was like, in order for us, and I'm paraphrasing. But in order for us to really come together as Black feminists, we would have to do something that no one else has done. We would have to fight the world. And we're clear, I'm just saying, and we're clear that we have to fight the world. Not only are we fighting structures and systems, we are also fighting Black men. We can't find Black men to stand with us. You know, and Malcolm X did a speech in 1963 talking about, you know, how Black men need to respect and protect Black women, and they won't be seen as, how could they see themselves as men if they are not standing in solidarity with the women who are fighting to protect our families and our lives. So I just want to leave you with those bits and hope that, you know, in what I've shared with you, that you can tease out some ways that you can maybe be involved, that you'd like to get engaged. We have a listserv. I think we're going to send around a piece of paper later, or we'll, you know, I'll be able to contact you through that and invite you to our listserv. You can choose to accept it or not. But I just encourage you to get connected to our movement, to find out what we're doing, to really, if you don't have the answer, contact us and find out. But I just want to thank you very much. Thank you.